In this episode, we explore why stories from the World War II era still matter today and what they teach us about courage, resilience, and the human spirit.
And the hidden emotional impact of history on families, including how the experiences of parents and grandparents can shape future generations.
How our guest transforms real-life experiences into compelling stories that bring history alive through unforgettable characters and personal journeys.
And the miracles, the moments of hope, the acts of kindness that emerged during one of the darkest periods in modern history.
And why preserving family stories and personal histories is one of the greatest gifts we can give future generations. Welcome to the Late Boomers podcast, where we bring you inspiring stories of people creating new chapters in life with style, power, and impact. I'm Cathy Worthington.
And I'm Mary Elkins. Today we're talking about something that connects all generations, the power of personal stories and the resilience in difficult times, and the lessons we can carry forward from those who lived through extraordinary moments in history.
You know, Mary, as we get older, many of us become more interested in our own family histories. We start asking questions like, where did we come from? What did our parents and grandparents experience? What stories were never told?
Boy, is that true. And sometimes we discover that people closest to us lived through things we never fully understand and may never understand now. But their experiences shaped who they became and how they loved and how they survived, and ultimately how they influenced us.
Today, we're diving into the World War II era, a time of incredible hardship, loss, courage, and also extraordinary examples of hope and humanity. Our guest has spent years researching and writing about the personal experiences of people who lived through that period.
And what's fascinating is that our guest doesn't just focus on dates and historical facts. She focuses on the human stories, the choices people made, the suffering that they endured, the miracles that they experienced, and the resilience that they found.
I think it's especially meaningful for the late boomers audience because many of us grew up hearing stories from parents, grandparents, or relatives who lived through World War II, the Depression, or other challenging times. Sometimes those stories weren't shared until much later, and sometimes they were never shared at all.
And there's so much wisdom in those stories. They remind us that people can survive unimaginable circumstances and still rebuild their lives, still find love, hope, purpose, everything.
And our guest today is Caroline Crocker. She is an author and speaker whose World War II series explores the diverse ways individuals responded to suffering, trauma, and uncertainty. We're going to be talking about her third book in her series, which is called The Truth Was Different. Her writing brings history alive through deeply personal stories, and she shares her reflections at ramblingruminations.com.
Caroline, welcome to Late Boomers. We're happy to have you with us.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Caroline, you've spoken internationally about your World War II series of books. What originally drew you to this period in history, and what personal stories from that era continue to stay with you?
You know, it's a very obvious reason that I started to do this, and that was because my parents came from the Netherlands and they lived through World War II. And so when my father passed away, I wanted to distract my mother from her grief because, sometimes distraction isn't a bad thing. So what I did was I wrote down all the funny stories she told me about her childhood. And then I showed her what I'd written. And I said, hey, Mom, do you think this would make a book? And she said, well, you forgot most of it. And I said, Mom, you never told me the rest. And so then over the next 5 years, we talked about the rest and about the stories that you wouldn't tell a child. And as the more we talked, the more she remembered, of course. And the more I painted the picture of her childhood home, the more she could see the people in the house. And so that really helped with making the story come alive because, I could ask her, "Hey, Mom, when your dad was stressed out, what did he do?" Well, he swore and he pounded his hand on the table and it made the table jump. And I didn't like it because the top of the table was only at my nose.
Oh,
Oh,
Or what did your mom do? Well, she said she was going to go throw herself in the ocean. And I thought, wow, that was a
oh,
little traumatic, but okay.
yeah.
yeah.
So she told me, the stories of her growing up. And I did a lot of research then to figure out, okay, because she was only 5 when the war began. So, what was she actually talking about in this story or in that one? And so I was able to look it up and see, okay, this was when this would have happened, and this is what was happening historically. And so I was able to put everything in order and make it pretty much a historical document apart from the fact that there's dialogue in it.
Mhm.
Well, what a wonderful way for you to get closer to your mother too. That's
Yeah.
really
Discovered a lot about her, I'll tell you that.
well, but that's so nice for you. So your books explore how different individuals respond to intense suffering and hardship. What do
Mm.
you think modern readers can learn from the way people coped with war and loss, fear, and trauma?
Well, I mean, unfortunately, life is difficult for everybody. Everybody suffers. It's just I don't think anybody has a seamless ride through life. It's always difficult. And so to see how other people did it and and what they found helpful in that may be helpful for them. For example, my dad, he had a very traumatic childhood. I had to take breaks writing the book about him. It's called Unforgivable, and it was devastating. He was he was born to a mother who didn't want him or his brother, and then his
Oh.
father became ill, and so his mother dropped him and his brother off at a children's home when he was only
Oh,
5, and his
oh,
brother was 2. And well, she didn't have the money to pay for them, so my dad had to work for their living. So he was kind of like the little, I don't know, the bus boy. He had to do it all. He had to, empty the trash and clean the shoes and pick up the sticks and to earn a living for him and his brother. What his mother may not have realized was that this place was also abusive.
yeah.
And so on the cover of Unforgivable, when you see that cover, you'll see that Dad had a black eye. And in fact, I couldn't find any pictures of him as a little guy where he didn't have a black eye.
Oh my gosh.
Oh,
And so he was then dealing with abandonment and abuse. And well, then the war began. So let's add that into the trauma. He had to go pick up sticks in the woods where the German soldiers were hanging out. And,
Wow.
at one point, a German soldier told him to go and buy bread and gave him
for
money.
them, for them.
Yep, because the villagers wouldn't sell bread to the Germans. So my dad went and tried to get bread, and the baker said, "Well, I'm not giving bread to him." And so Dad had to go back to this German soldier, thinking he was probably going to be shot. And how traumatic as it was, the German soldier told him that he doesn't shoot. He only shoots cowards. So Dad was okay, but still, it was a very traumatic thing to have happened to him.
Yeah.
Yeah, he had to grow up so fast and be so brave and really,
Right.
yeah, kids today maybe can't even relate to that. But
Unless
one of the things,
you're in the Ukraine or Gaza or any
yeah,
Yeah,
place
places
in the
where kids
world.
do have to deal
oh
with war.
yeah,
And
oh yeah,
they see people being murdered, and it's and in some of our inner cities, people, kids see that kind of thing, or I mean, they may live in an abusive home.
Yeah.
right.
Unfortunately, these things do continue to happen.
Right. Well, one of the things that really stands out in your work is the presence of miracles and moments of hope. So, can you share one miracle or extraordinary event from your books that brings you the most joy?
One is, is it a miracle? I don't know, but it's kind of miraculous. And that is on the very first day of the war, um, my mother's mother, so that's my grandmother's best friend, um, her house was bombed. The Germans bombed the entire coastline and they got her house. And a shell fragment went into her baby's brain.
Oh.
So she picked up her baby's body and she brought him to my grandmother's house, and she wouldn't let him go for 3 days. So it was, very traumatic. This woman's name was Vera. And so then I don't know any more about Vera, except for then my grandmother became pregnant and gave birth to a baby during the last year of the war. Well, at that point, there was no food in that part of the Netherlands, so they were starving. She gave birth 2 months early, and she had no milk. But also, the Germans had barricaded, so there was no food in the shops either. So even though she was given, sort of ration coupons for milk, there wasn't any milk. There was no food at all. And so she brought her baby home and just gave him water because that's all there was. And she couldn't even boil it because they didn't have any fuel either. And well, Vera heard that her best friend had had a baby. Just a couple days after he was born, the baby was born, the Allies got a map upside down, and they mistakenly bombed the Bezuidenhout neighborhood in The Hague. That's where she was living then. And when they did that, it killed her new baby.
Oh.
So this is her second son, also dead. Well, she heard that her best friend had had a baby, Vera did, so she walked around to her best friend's house, and she went up the stairs, and as she did, she heard the baby, who is my uncle, crying. And she went upstairs, she opened her blouse, and she nursed him.
Oh.
And to me, having lost 2 babies herself, to nurse her best friend's baby is miraculous. That's just mind-blowing to me. And then she did that every day, even though it was cold, and she also had no food. Once a day, she would come and nurse my uncle. And one of the things that I think is really cool about this is he didn't know. Until the book was published, my uncle didn't know why he was alive. That it was this lady, Vera, whose last name I don't know.
Because his mother never told him that.
His mother never told him. She didn't
Oh,
tell him
that would have been
before.
such a beautiful thing to tell your son.
Yeah.
I mean,
my friend saved you.
I'm so moved by that story. And I was about to ask you if there was a particular story that changed you personally. I don't know if this is the story you tell or if you have another one you'd like to tell, because that is so touching.
Huh. Let me see.
Something that's unforgettable.
Yeah, there's one that has had a big impact on me. Is it negative? Is it positive? I don't know. Maybe it's just being grateful for what I have. And that is that halfway through the war, the Nazis came to the home where my dad was. Okay, so this is in the book Unforgivable. And they separated the Jewish from the non-Jewish children. Now, Dad had a Jewish mother. And so according to the Nuremberg laws, he was Jewish enough. Now, a Jewish person would say he wasn't Jewish because it came from her father. So, but anyway, but he was, according to the Nuremberg laws. But for some reason, they didn't take my dad and his brother, but they did take his cousins, and they took his friends. And they took one friend who taught Dad to play the piano, a girl called Keetje van Zante. And they sent the kids who were not taken into a room as they took the Jewish kids off, and Keetje escaped from the room where she was and ran and threw her arms around my father and said, "Fritz, Fritz, save me." And he said, "What can I do?" And then one of the nurses took Keetje away, and and she was taken to Auschwitz, where she died.
Oh.
And the thing is, Keetje taught my dad how to play the piano, and Dad taught me. And I'm like, that is so cool. It's almost like Keetje taught me. And my dad actually didn't tell that story until he was in his mid-60s. It was far too painful for him. But when I did the research for Unforgivable, I looked up Keetje and I looked up her family to see, well, is there anybody who is still alive? Anybody who I could, send a copy of this book to? No, they were all murdered, every one of them. There's nobody in her family alive. Nobody to remember her, except there's a whole lot of people who know about her now. And I'm like, it doesn't bring her back, but she is definitely remembered.
Oh, that
Gives
is
her-
that is powerful.
And it gives her a fabulous legacy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The music tradition
It does. And
and
you
her
know what?
legacy.
Everybody dies eventually. I would prefer she had not died so young. But by
Mhm.
now she would have been gone anyway, right? But she's
Well,
Yeah.
remembered.
Well, it's interesting
Well-
because Jewish heritage is often not preserved because of World War II.
Yeah.
And so it is quite possible that maybe there are people there somewhere that you don't know about because it wasn't recorded at the time or it was destroyed.
Maybe. I've looked, but it looked like her whole family was gone.
Mhm.
But maybe there is somebody somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you combine historical truth with storytelling that feels like fiction. So, how do you balance accuracy and research with creating an emotional connection for the reader?
Well, I try very hard to make sure everything is accurate. I do a lot of research, so much research. The book I'm working on now, I've been doing 2 years nonstop research, and then I wrote it and then I was like, oh, I found out this. Oh, now I found out this. Start again.
Oh,
So it's very important to me to get it right. But obviously, if I just was to spat out the dry facts, it's kind of boring. So what I do is instead of just giving you the facts, I create the incident in words. So I try and put the reader into the situation. And obviously the dialogue is made up.
Mhm.
I try as
Mhm.
hard as I can to make the dialogue true to the way that person spoke. There are some people where I don't know how they spoke, but I can guess. For example, my grandmother, I didn't know her, my dad's mother, and that's the one that The Truth Was Different is about. And the reason I wrote the book was because people who read Unforgivable most often say, "What was wrong with his mother?" And I thought, I want to know. And so I did a lot of research into this lady. And she actually wrote an autobiography where she changed all the names and all the places and lots of details. So that required a lot of research to untangle all that and find out who she really was talking about.
Yeah.
Oh,
But,
yeah.
and it also was challenging because, well, the book wasn't in English.
Oh.
Oh, yeah.
Fritz. So I was like, oh my gosh, this is so hard, but I did it.
But-
Was it in Dutch or
Yes.
German?
In
Dutch?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
can you read Dutch or do you speak it?
Not well, but it takes a while. But yeah, I did. She actually wrote 5 books, but only one of them she said was true. But as I read the others, I was like, oh no, there's truth in a lot of these. Anyway, the way I could figure
So
out.
she switches all the names and then you go in and try and switch them back.
Oh, I did.
That
switch
is
them all back.
murder. It's like,
Yeah.
So some of your characters in your World War II series were based on real people, but were any based just on composites or family memories? And also, how did you bring the personalities and emotions to life when you were writing about people maybe that you've never met?
Okay. Well, so yes, are there any yeah, there is a my dad's best friend in the orphanage. I um I I called him Trouble. As far as I know, there wasn't a child called Trouble. But I know my dad's personality, and so I can imagine him getting into trouble and doing devious things, and so to have a partner in crime, I didn't think that was all that terrible to put that in, and I do actually put that at the beginning of every book where, okay, this is this is as true as I can make it.
Mhm.
And none of the major incidents in that book they all happened, the major incidents. It's just that there are some details where I just had to, make up the dialogue. And,
Mhm.
yeah, so I forgot what you asked. I'm sorry.
Oh, just the how you brought the personalities and emotions to life if you'd never met these people.
Right, yeah. Well, sometimes, for example, with my grandmother, the person in The Truth Was Different, I could read it because she wrote about herself. Um, she in all of her books except one, she said they were fiction. But when I saw in many books the same incidents being described again and again and again, I was like, that's not fiction. That happened. And so I was able
Mhm.
to get her voice from that.
Hmm.
The other thing is that um, as I read about her, I realized, oh my gosh, she's the one I take after. And so
Oh.
that wasn't too hard either because I could think, "Oh, she would react the way I would, except for
Ah,
I'm not as damaged a person as her." But,
well,
I
in
so
what way would you say?
well, so getting impatient with people, not suffering fools gladly, things like that. I'm like,
Mhm.
"Oh, that's just like me," Oh,
But you shared that many of your members of your family were not sent to concentration camps, but your parents, aunts, uncles, and grandparents experienced tremendous suffering during World War II. And you
yeah.
mentioned about the food and all that. So,
Mm.
how has that history affected you personally?
Oh, yeah, it has. So the the last year of the war, the Allies asked the Dutch people to have their railways go on strike so that the Germans wouldn't be able to bring in more munitions or food,
Oh,
so they would be cut off.
oh,
And the Dutch did that. Well, the Germans retaliated by cutting off transport of all food um, and fuel to that side of the country. Unfortunately, by the time they realized that was actually harming their own soldiers, you'd think they would have figured that out. But by the time they realized that, um, the one of the coldest winters on record had set in. Most of the bridges had by then been bombed, the canals were frozen, and there was no way to get food or fuel to that area of the country.
mm,
And so the people starved, and 20,000 people dropped dead of starvation.
oh,
Um, and yeah, that's affected me. I mean, it even affects me now because my mother, who had no food growing up, she still stores food in her bedroom. She lives with me. I mean, that's not a big trauma. I'm just saying it does actually affect me.
mm,
If there
Mhm.
is food left over from a meal, she will put that tablespoon in the fridge.
mm.
And if I want to throw it away, I need to do it when she's not looking because it's stressful for her.
Mhm.
You know,
I get it.
it's
Yeah.
also been interesting as I heard her talk about it because she kept repeating, we were not of strategic importance. We were not of strategic importance. And I said, Mom, what do you mean? And she said, well, the Allies liberated some of the Netherlands, but they needed to march straight to Germany to win the war. So they didn't liberate us.
Oh,
And so they spent that winter starving. Her sister got tuberculosis. A lot of people died. 2
Mhm.
years after the end of the war, when the Dutch government sent people from school to see who would live and who would die, who was worth feeding. When they looked at my mom, they said, it's not worth feeding her. She's going to die anyway. And she didn't like that idea, so she blew her cheeks up. Show how fat she is. And because of that, they sent her for extra food. And that's why she's 91.
Oh,
But
smart mom.
that's
Yeah.
right. But the whole not of strategic importance thing, I couldn't figure out why, what was that all about? And what I realized was that at the tender age of 9, she had taken it into herself. You are not important. You are so unimportant that you don't even deserve food.
Oh,
And I
that's
realized
heartbreaking.
that's where some of her stranger behaviors come from. She really would like to have a lot of attention. She tells you how wonderful she is. And I'm like, where does that come from? And then I realized, she has a massive inferiority complex.
Yeah.
Because she was told at 9, you're not even important enough to deserve food.
Yeah, or live.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
were there stories that you wrote that were really difficult to write? And others that perhaps, other than the one that you told us about the mother and her milk, that really reminded you of the goodness that does exist in the world, even during awful times?
Yeah. I mean, what a good one is another miracle that happened in Braveface. And that was where my mother's eldest sister got tuberculosis during the hunger winter. And she, didn't recover. Of course, there was still very, very little food. And at one point, the germs got into her throat and began, swelling so that she could no longer swallow. She could no longer breathe. And the doctor came and he said, well, I could do surgery and then she would die. Or I could just leave her and she'll die in a week. So your choice, And my grandmother and grandfather took all the money they had and they got up at 4 a.m. and they walked to a famous healer who was operating in those days. And they asked her, they got to the front of the line and she said to them, go home, your daughter's well. And they said, well, no, we have this money and we have this photograph. And she said, no, just go home. She's fine. And so they turned around and went home and were talking on the way that, of course, Corey would die. And when they got home, Corey was walking to the bathroom, holding onto the wall. And after that, Corey got better. And she did actually get married. She had 2 kids and she died in her 80s. So, so that's a very encouraging story.
Yeah. Were there some that were more difficult to write?
Oh, yeah. Many, many. Actually, the book I'm writing now, I'm just editing it now, but that has been very, very difficult because my grandmother went through every kind of trauma there is. She was widowed. Her fiance was arrested. He was in the resistance and shot. Ooh. And just every trauma there is. I mean, I'm just like, I don't even know. And then, of course, she was misjudged because she did put my father and his brother in a children's home, and people misjudged her because they were, why did you do that? And instead of realizing, she actually has to work. She can't take care of 2 small children because she has to work to take care of her husband who's dying. She has to pay for his medical bills. And so I was just really struck by the trauma that she went through. And a lot of it, she described very, very well. For example, there was, again, doing research and looking and using my scientific training. It was very interesting to read what she wrote, for example, about her husband dying, where she wasn't there when it happened, but she quizzed her sister-in-law who was, and her sister-in-law described all the things that happened and what he was saying as he was dying. Well, the man had myasthenia gravis,
Mhm.
That is an autoimmune disorder where you gradually lose control of your muscles, and you die when your diaphragm stops working and you suffocate to death.
Mm.
Now, how likely is it that you would be talking?
Not at all likely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I was just fascinated as she clearly didn't put 2 and 2 together, but I did. As she talked about how the doctor came because he wasn't feeling well and said, "Well, I've done everything I can now," and then he left. And then the man was talking and, said he felt very, very tired. And then he began to sweat, and then he died. And I was like, "Oh my gosh, my grandfather was murdered."
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh,
So, it's things like that where it just blows.
yeah.
And so I mean, it was hard to realize, and my grandmother never knew. And if
Mm-hmm.
he had not been murdered, um, medicine for that disease was not that long in the future. In other words, my dad could have had a father growing up.
uh,
Yeah.
Hmm. Okay.
So
Well, maybe.
yeah.
Well, these are heavy subjects. I agree. Yeah, it's hard. Um, on a different subject, a little bit. Many people today are interested in preserving their family history. So, what advice would you give someone who wants to capture the stories of their parents or grandparents before they are lost?
mm, um, yeah, you need to talk to them. I mean, you can ask them to you could put on a tape recorder. I mean,
Yeah,
that's one way. Um, with
record
my
everything.
Yeah,
Mhm.
record it. I mean, with my dad, he was gone before I wrote his story, and, um, so I had to find it other ways, and that was it was quite amazing in
Hmm.
that my mother had letters that his father had written him, which is
Oh,
another way I knew that the man was not dying of myasthenia gravis. I mean, that he was murdered because he wrote him a letter 2 days before he died. I was like, I don't think so." You know? Um, yeah, yes, so I had those letters, and then I also had something that his brother had written, 15 pages, and, somebody who was in the children's home with my father, was still alive, and so I was able to find out information from them. The place where the children's home was, this place called Driebergen, there, was a historian there who actually bicycled around from place to place to find information for me. So,
oh,
I just got the information from all over the place. It was very interesting,
Super,
very
yeah,
interesting.
super.
So,
yeah.
yeah, I mean, if you were gonna do it, you have to do a lot of digging if you wanna do it that accurately.
Yeah,
Or
that's a
you could
great.
just record their stories and write those down and just say this is what they recall
You could,
as
and
soon
yeah,
as you can, because
right, right.
yeah, yeah,
The
I
my
did
interesting
I did some of that with my dad, and I have a recording, and it's so nice to when I play it, which is rare, but when I do play it, I hear his voice. And
hmm,
and
I
Mary,
have
did you digitize it?
no, but I should.
Everything needs to be digitized or
I
it'll be
should.
all lost.
Yeah, and probably I hope it's still there because it's been a while. But
mhm,
Yeah.
I had some of it. But you write about resilience, Carolyn, and something many people in our late boomers audience have experienced in different ways that and had quite a few problems that they've had to recover from. So,
mhm.
what qualities did you see in the people you studied that helped them survive and move forward?
Well, it's been interesting to see the different ways people coped.
Hmm.
I mean, mom coped by I mean, she's a talker, so she talks a lot. Um, and she had a very loving family, so even though she starved, she had that basic love undergirding her, and I think that's why she did alright, although there's very obvious PTSD going on in a lot of ways, like, she's terrified of fire because she saw a building burn down and the Nazis not let people leave. There's
Uh,
things like that where I'm like, "Okay, I can see the problems from that."
Mhm.
Some problems you just live with. It's just they come with you. Dad, I did wonder because he all his life said to me that he's unforgivable because he was, and I wondered where that came from. And then I realized when I found out about the abuse from what his brother had written, because his brother described how he was thrown against walls, I was like, now I know why he thought he was unforgivable, because people who are abused think they deserve it. But actually what was done to him was unforgivable. What happened in his life was unforgivable. And I thought, well, then how did he turn out to be a good man? And I realized that he, when I was growing up, always said to me, Carolyn, you need to forgive. You need to forgive. Now, Dad was not a believer, but he was very strong on you have to forgive.
Mm.
And I never heard him say a bad word about those women who threw him against walls. I never heard him say a bad word against, the Germans. Yeah, he did. It was actually rather
Wow.
funny. We were walking in the Netherlands, and he was talking, and he said, "Well, I forgive people, and it's I don't, it's not their fault, and I forgive them, and the Germans are nice people." And then there was a group of Germans who walked past us, and Dad says, "But I don't know why they have to speak that godforsaken language." And I was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, right, you forgive." So he forgave
Well,
as much as he could.
you have spent so much time immersed in stories of war and hardship. So, what have you learned about forgiveness, compassion, and the ability of people to rebuild their lives?
I think it's really important to forgive. I really do. The book I'm writing right now, The Truth Was Different, which will be out in November, that was something she did not do.
Mm.
And
She did not forgive.
she did not forgive, and she turned out to be a very bitter woman, who rejected her sons to the end. And it's just such a sad story. This was something that she chose. She chose to close down emotionally, and she actually records that choice
Mm.
of, I am going to shut down emotionally, and she couldn't love and she didn't forgive. And that's really sad. And
Yeah.
especially I'm comparing it to her brother's story. Now, her brother, that'll be, I think, the book I write after this, but I haven't got it on my website yet. But his daughters have asked me to write it, so I'm like, oh yeah, I want to write that. He actually went to Auschwitz. His wife and his children and he were all sent to Auschwitz. His wife and kids were all killed.
Oh.
He came out and he was a very, very broken man, as you can imagine. He was an alcoholic. He was, he had a temper. He was just messed up. His first marriage after that ended in divorce, but his second marriage, his mother-in-law was a believer, and she told him that he needed to forgive. She also told him the only way you can forgive is through Jesus.
Mm.
And he did.
Mm. Wow.
And, I'm not saying that he was a perfect man after that. No, he wasn't. But he was more functional.
Right. Because when you can't forgive, it just eats up your insides. It eats up everything about you.
It
Yeah.
It
does.
just makes you so unhappy. Like you
Right.
suffer way more than the person you didn't forgive.
Well, yeah.
That's true.
They don't care at all, do they?
They don't care
That's
at all.
true. Yeah, and all it does is destroy you rather than destroy the person that you can't forgive. And I think you might have just answered this question I have for you, which is, what do you hope readers take away from your World War II series, and beyond learning about history? And what do you hope they feel or understand more, maybe
Yeah,
about themselves or the world?
Yeah, I think it's really important that people understand that war affects everybody. So far I haven't written about anybody who actually went through the Holocaust. They just lived through war. And I think that's something that that we need to be aware of is that war actually affects everybody, and also that people have damage that doesn't always show. And so to be gentle and patient with them.
Mm.
There were many times when I would get annoyed with my parents, But now I'm like, oh, that's why they acted like they did.
Mhm.
They were damaged because of what they went through. And they passed on the damage to their kids. And, until people are actually aware of it, it doesn't go away.
Well,
Mhm.
I've heard that often, even when you don't know the people or haven't ever met them, that damage can be passed on through generations.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, generational trauma, don't they
Hmm.
call that?
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
they actually say that the children of people who went through the hunger winter have much higher rates of anxiety, diabetes, and obesity. And I'm like, that's interesting because I'm one of 5 kids. We all deal with anxiety, and I'm the only one in the family who does not have diabetes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of our listeners are entering a stage of life where legacy becomes more important. Like
Mm.
you're really thinking about it. So, how can we make sure the lessons and stories from our generation are passed down to those who come after us?
It's not easy. I'll tell you because I've written these books, but I don't think any of my kids have read them. That's fairly
Well,
normal.
you're their mother.
That's right. It's fairly normal with authors that,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but other people's families read them. And so maybe my kids will read the books that other parents do, and I guess it
Someday
doesn't
they'll read
really
them.
matter, does it? If it's me or somebody else, you know, that they learn from, it's fine. So,
Yeah.
But
Well,
we
look,
do need to think about passing those stories down, the ones we have lived.
I think we do. And I know that I used to tell my children the stories of, my childhood and, the funny ones. And I actually tell my grandkids the stories of my childhood. And I tell my grandkids the stories of my kids' childhood. And they love it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
you so,
Yeah.
in my childhood, well, I grew up in Canada during the '60s, so it was very different.
Oh,
And
yeah.
so
Mhm.
I can talk to them about, the time when there was a wolf in the backyard
Ah,
and,
Mhm.
and how I didn't listen to my mom when she told me to come in and,
oh,
things like this, all these stories that they would not hear because, and they're from my childhood. So,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they
valuable.
will never forget them, though. So, looking at the world today, Carolyn, with so much insanity and uncertainty and division, what lessons from World War II and that generation do you think we need to most remember?
Yeah, kind of hesitant to get political, but I will say that I am very aware that, that my mom, her mother was German, that my German relatives said they knew. They knew it was happening, but it was kill or be killed. They were saving their own skin.
Mm.
And I think, can I blame them? Because there are things that I see or that I am aware of happening around me, and have I done anything about it?
Mm.
And that bothers me. It really does. I guess I would say, no, I haven't. I know that they're, it to some degree, I think, oh, well, I'm all right. I'm white. But you know what? There are people who aren't. And so this is something that bothers me. And I guess I haven't done anything about it.
I get that.
Maybe
You're writing your books.
I
I'm writing the
totally,
book.
That's
yeah,
doing a lot. That's
Yes.
doing what you can do.
Well, and I think that's it, isn't we can only do what we can do. I certainly would not be a good politician. I would be a cruddy politician. But
yeah,
I
it's
can be
very
an
hard.
author. I can do that. I can write my
Mhm.
books, and people do read them, and they do think about it. Um,
And where should our listeners look for you and find you online?
okay, so I have a website. My son told me that's what I should call it because I never stick to one topic. Um, it's called Rambling Ruminations.
Yeah,
So
I thought that was pretty clever.
yeah, it's HTTPS what colon // RAMBLING RUMINATIONS. And there you will actually find not only my World War II books, but you'll also find books about my dog. There are fiction books and books about my childhood growing up in Canada, and some nonfiction books as well. Well, I guess they're all nonfiction, kind of. Well.
Excellent. Thank you. Carolyn, thank you for joining us today, because your work reminds us that history is not just about events, it's about people. It's about courage, choices, love, survival, and the stories that shape who we become.
Yes, and we hope this conversation inspires our listeners to think about their own family stories and the wisdom that exists within the generations before us.
To our late boomers audience, thank you for spending this time with us. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with someone who would appreciate Carolyn's message.
Yes, and please subscribe to our Late Boomers podcast on YouTube, like this episode, and follow us wherever you get your podcasts.
Remember what we late boomers always say:
it's never too late to rethink what's possible. Thank you, Carolyn. Great to have you.
Thank you.